Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues and listeners. Here we are again, Saturday show, and it's actually on a Saturday this morning. So it seems weird doing it a day late, or the day that it should actually be on, Steve. But lovely to see you again. Really appreciated. Right, we've got a fair bit to talk about today. Firstly, I'd just like to just give a little plug for the Pharma digital event. We finished most of them during the week. And I got to say, some of the people that are on there, well, no, not some of the people, all of the people that were on there, absolutely positive, very engaged. And I think it's a really, really good sign that, you know, no matter what comes at us, you know, the industry is going to be able to handle it. But some really good insights. And yesterday's one, which we covered the IATA guidelines and the Cold Chain Association, the methodology, the MOU, very, very interesting. So everybody will be pleased to see that one, I'm sure. Now, they come out on the 7th, 8th and 9th of December. So hopefully, you know, we'll get some good feedback on that. Now, Steve, back to this week, my friend. So,
good morning, Chris.
Good. Oh, sorry. The formalities there.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm very good, mate.
Well, I was just letting you recover that minor faux pas there for a second. But yeah, I'm glad that all of your guests were superb rather than just some of them.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that all of your guests this morning will be equally superb.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure.
Let's make sure I live up to expectations.
You will. You always do, son. You always do. Right, lovely boy. Here we go. Now, good news to start with. Obviously, we've spoken about the vaccines coming, and you know it's great now that there's going to be 12 or 13. So the selection and the choice, which is also going to help with the distribution, because obviously the industry at the moment doesn't know what they don't know because of the pharmaceutical organizations not exactly sure on the final detail, which is understandable, and which is also another endorsement for the greatness and how magnificent the scientists have been with producing these vaccines so quickly and so early. Now, with that in mind, a little bit of good news, because it's very difficult at the moment, because even though we're seeing good news, it's almost like the tail of the crocodile. So we've seen the fight, we've seen the weight of the problem, and now the tail starts whipping around last, but you know, sometimes causes more damage. But travel giant, not just travel, they announced a 62% sales spike, and that consumer confidence is coming back. And obviously, as soon as people start to hear good news, Steve, I think everybody, that even the worst skeptic, they must see how quickly people want to help get out there, rebound, get on with life, and now do all the things that they felt that they haven't been able to do for such a long time. So that was really good news. A little point that I know you've got an affiliation with this particular organization, and we've mentioned them so long, and we still haven't received a cap nor a t-shirt from Joseph, but Norwegians warning to Wizz Air. It just goes to show that, you know, whatever the business model, sometimes you come up against local laws, and there's a sort of a boundary or a wall that you're not expecting.
Well, I mean, look, firstly, touch on the good news. I mean, I think, yes, look, it's positive, Chris, to see that consumer confidence, despite, you know, the vaccine not yet being in situ, I think there's been enough good press around that. Probably we want some more good press to outweigh the negative press that we're so used to seeing. But certainly that has a direct and meaningful impact on the consumer's confidence and their behaviours. And for our business, that translates into people wanting to book holidays, or at least, you know, make searches. And I think the big search engines this week, people like Kayak and Skyscanner, have all reported, massive increases in searches, particularly for holidays for 2021. As I mentioned on the podcast, I think 2 weeks ago, I'd spoken to a C-level exec of a large European carrier, and they had told me that 2021 summer was already starting to look good in terms of advanced booking. So that sort of mess continues. I think the immediate challenge remains winter. Winter 20, winter 21, as we go, or the scheduled season, winter 2021, I should clarify. That I think remains the immediate challenge. Chris, we've seen, that there are still some announcements coming out this week from the likes of EasyJet, removing capacity in Italy, taking aircraft out of places like Milan, Rome, Naples, redeploying that capacity elsewhere, or parking that capacity through the winter. But conversely, I think we've seen some positive news from the likes of Air France that, we don't often see positive news out of Air France. There hasn't been huge positive stories coming out of Air France over the last few years, but I think what is positive is we've seen that they're reconnecting. I think the number was somewhere between 20 to 25 winter destinations back on their network for winter 20. So that's, in the immediate short term, I think that is a good thing. Obviously, they're seeing some spikes in demand increasing, and they're responding to that.
Yeah.
It remains, I read today, sadly though, France obviously, for the winter tourism season, for the ski resorts, they've been ordered by the government in Paris to keep their ski lifts closed. Whilst there may not be full national restrictions that will be in place at the time, they're asking the ski resort operators to keep their ski lifts closed. But actually, the resorts can remain open for other winter activities. So quite a disjointed message there, I think, and obviously very, very disappointing for the winter tourism season that was just sort of caught up in the midst of this last year. December through to March, April as the ski season was ending, but it had a massive impact. So personally and selfishly, I've not been able to ski for a few years because of some surgery that I've had in various parts of my body, mostly below the waist. You'll be pleased to hear, or maybe not, but no, I've had some surgery on my feet, and I was hoping to get back into ski season this year, but that looks pretty unlikely. To your specific point, I think, Chris, just around sort of more generally around. Actually, I forgot what your question was, given that I went off on the capacity issue there. But
thinking about the operations below the waist.
Hey? I was, yeah.
Yeah, the operations below the waist through. No, just about the good news and.
Sorry, Norwegian and Wizz Air. Yeah. Look, I guess, sorry. So building up to that, building up to a bit of a climax there in terms of responding to Wizz Air. I think Wizz Air come in for a lot of unfair criticism. Again, you mentioned an affiliation with Wizz Air. I have no affiliation with Wizz Air. You and I have developed an affiliation with Wizz Air on this podcast, but for the purposes of my professional and business life, there is no affiliation with Wizz Air. It's simply that I doff my cap to well-run, well-managed, disciplined airlines that have been managed very well before this crisis and have been managed very well through this crisis. If Wizz Air are able to take advantage of an opportunity, Chris, that allows them entry into new markets, then I think so be it. And it's for the competition to respond. It's for the competition market authorities to ensure that competition is fair. And that they don't abuse any dominant position. But as I've seen this week, I read a note from Wizz Air saying this week that they were really pleased with the response, in Abu Dhabi, the new Abu Dhabi joint venture, and that's going really well for them. So, Norwegian can harp on all they like, but Norwegian right now is a bankrupt airline that isn't operating. So I'm really not sure what Norwegian's gripe is. When they start to put planes back in the air, maybe they can start having a pop.
Yeah, no, it's to do with unions and the agreement that Wizz Air have with their pilots, etc. And just to clear up, your disclaimer is well founded, Stephen. It's just when I say affiliation, I'm talking about your admiration for a business model.
Admiration rather than affiliation, correct?
Yeah, admiration for a business model and also for the leaders of that particular organisation. So we've clarified that. But one thing that's common, I know your love of transport ministers. And obviously the blockers in Norway are also from a transport minister as well. So, but it's just that, such local laws, and like you said, maybe that's one of the reasons why the sustainability of certain companies and certain organisations aren't.
But you see, Chris, these countries like the Nordics and the Scandinavia in general, they are predicated on socialism, and socialism makes people dependent on the state. And I suspect that is not something that Wizz Air would agree on. Wizz Air is an airline that has benefited from open and free markets and in a capitalist environment where offering the lowest fare, offering a great product consistently wins out, rather than expecting the government to continually support, prop up, and maintain the existence of unviable businesses. And it's no surprise, therefore, to me that it's the unions that are arcing up, because the unions are absolutely entrenched in that socialist state.
Yep, very clearly put, my friend. Now, another good bit of news with organisations that one or both of us might admire equally is the WFS and the Mallaghan with the De-Icer, the launch customer for North America. WFS, well done, guys. And Mallaghan and with Ronan and all the team there, great company, great fun. So well done to them for the launch of their new TA8200. The newer, and that's in Newark, so fair play to him. And just a little
that rolls off the tongue. I must say,
TA8200. And what
so Ronan must have come up with that model, the nomenclature for the model number there after a couple of Guinnesses, I suspect. But anyway, I wouldn't like to cast aspersions on Mr. Mallaghan's good name.
No, especially not. But some of the safety issues and also the environmental issues of that particular model are also worth mentioning. So fair play to you guys.
I think Mallaghan actually, Chris, is a great little British success story.
Yeah.
I think they've gone leaps and bounds. And if you look at their kit, I like you, Chris, have had the fortune or misfortune, but fortune for the most part, to live and work, from in various parts of, from the Americas right over to Australia and everywhere in between. And there's bits of Mallaghan kit, all over the world in every part that you sort of set foot. So I think a great testament to the innovation and the great British engineering capability from that firm. So well done, lads.
Yep, and a very, very, very nice team. Now, nice little segue there. You said into Australia, Qantas. So again, now the TWU looking to sort of safeguard up to 2,000 ground handling jobs by keeping them inside instead of outsourcing. What's your points on? What do you think about that?
Well, Qantas have been in the news this week for a couple of reasons. Let's take the positive news before we come back onto the TWU, Chris. I think Australia was a country, or is a country with a federalist structure that allows the states a very strong say in border control, border management. And it was becoming quite frustrating for the Commonwealth, as it was for the Australian carriers, in particular for Qantas, that were, Virgin Australia obviously have gone through the period of administration that they now come out of a couple of weeks ago. And it's great to see that. That's really good for Australian aviation to see them come out the other side of that. But what was finally good news this week is the majority of states are now reopened for business.
Yeah.
And there's now been a massive kind of flurry of activity to get aircraft back in the air. That means bringing people off job seekers back into employment. It means bringing people, the crew and staff that were stood down previously back into their jobs, and that's really good for all of the states, whether it be Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, WA, Northern Territory, etc. So I think that's really, really positive. However, Qantas at the same time is going through a large scale transformation or rehabilitation program, as all carriers are, Chris. And it was a couple of months ago now that they announced that they will be outsourcing their ramp handling across their domestic ports. As part of that arrangement or part of that decision, the TWU had the right to put in an offer to Qantas management to retain the ground handling work. So I mean, I'm not sure how that will play out. Let's see how it sort of is received and how it plays out. But there's certainly in the news that I've read, and this is only from external sources, they have been supported by EY, obviously a very large, capable consulting firm. EY believe their offer is credible. I guess time will tell, and we will know when Qantas want to tell us, I suspect, what the effects of that are. But I guess the challenge, Chris, has been that labour rates has been one of the sort of the handicaps or the noose around the neck of the the TWU. So it'd be really interesting for me to see what they do with their labour rates and what they do, based on getting back to somewhere closer to the modern award for those roles. Whether that's possible or not, I don't know. But certainly, the TWU have been quite active. They've been quite vocal about the way that they feel they have allegedly, I say we allegedly because we're sitting on the outside being treated by Qantas management. But I having known and been associated with Qantas for 10 years and more, 11 years, I think this year, I would think that Qantas will make sure they do the right thing for their business, for their people and for their shareholders. And that is important at this difficult time for everybody, of course.
Yeah, but it's an interesting challenge and an interesting, way of putting it forward. So it's good in one way, isn't it?
Look, it's good in one way. I mean, it certainly will ensure that the grey matter is being well exercised.
Yeah.
Of those in the TWU. If it doesn't bring them close to getting a deal or getting seeing alternative, maybe actually it will demonstrate how far away they are from what needs to be done in this new world going into 2021 to actually ensure that they can safeguard not only the future of Qantas Airways, the Qantas Group, but actually as many jobs as practically possible. And maybe they will have to come to the conclusion that Qantas management have done the right thing and will make the right decision by outsourcing.
Yeah, and I think I don't know. Maybe the winds of change are coming. I don't know, but when you look at leadership and you look at the traditional training and the traditional methodology, and everybody focuses on the leaders, and I think now you need to also focus on the people as well that need to be led, because we all do. Everybody reports to somebody, so the people that need to be led, and then also understanding what good leadership looks like and why. And also to appreciate good leadership and why. And for that to happen, they've got to understand that if you want a good living and for your family and everything else, you've got to support the company that's given it to you. And whilst obviously you've got to protect people in their jobs, it's important to make sure that continuity and sustainability is there. Otherwise, you're living always wondering what's going to happen next year or in 2 years or 3 years, and it prevents you from actually living a good life.
That's right.
I think the catalyst of change now, it's upon us. I think maybe people will start to appreciate, look after your assets, don't damage them, look after maintenance, don't have wasted processes, get rid of all this legacy of bureaucracy and blockers that we've had over the last few years. It's a great chance now to reboot and recharge people's mindset.
Well, I think when you look at Qantas, I mean, let's not talk about Qantas specifically, but more broadly, broadening that out a little bit. I think when you look at some of the legacy challenges that have existed, when the airlines have considered moving from self-handling or in-source catering and kitchens, ground handling, engineering, line maintenance, heavy maintenance, etc. All of these things come into play, Chris. And when you look at the way that the employees have acted and conducted themselves, through the years, I guess there's a sense of, if everyone can say with hand on heart that they have acted honorably, always in the best interests of the company, and the company can always say they've always acted in the best interests of the employees, then I suspect that you have a marriage of equals, and that the only reason that one would want to outsource something is if you can't get the value, the service, the quality, the safety outcomes, or the kind of the engagement from your own people. Yeah. For a company which you want to outsource, one of those 5 things that I've just sort of quickly referenced has fallen down or failed. And in each of the examples, that I could sort of, reel off that I want, it's rather unfair for us to do so. But, we could look at multiple jurisdictions and multiple carriers, whether they be, in the UK and Europe, or in the US, or in Africa, or in Asia Pacific, where carriers have gone through similar processes as Qantas is and doing, and I'm sure many others are doing. And therefore, it does make the sort of you wonder, why didn't they come to us and have those conversations before? Why didn't the union want to engage on these matters with the company? Why were they so difficult or obstinate when it came to sort of wanting to kind of, dictate and say, well, actually the tail is wagging the dog rather than the dog wagging the tail. And that's often a place that we got to in terms of the employee-employer relationship, when businesses were even looking at simple process change or digitalization or innovation or anything along those lines. That's been really hard for airlines and business in general, I suspect, to try to deliver over the years. And I really hope now this is a this horrible crisis that we've had to endure, and we're still enduring now to this day, will be that catalyst that you referenced, Chris.
No, I hope so. And another angle that I think as well, hopefully, you said about, well, you use the word fair, and I always keep using care, so maybe we should go under that, fair and care. So, but those two words are very important. But the most important thing I think as well is we were getting to a point where in our industry, most organizations have a problem to say no when it comes down to contracts and SLAs. Everything is yeah, and we'll deal with it later. And some of the decisions where the yeses have been the final word on the paper in the meeting, it's far too readily because of fear and because of worry and because of whatever, and that actually drags organizations then down further. So there's a balance, like you said, it's each side has got to be fair, each side needs to care. And by doing that and coming together, then the sustainability of the organizations hopefully will be much, much better. Now, on that word sustainability, another definition and another understanding has been well exercised by Dnata in New York. So the first ground handler to complete a green aircraft turnaround, which was brilliant. I think that's really good news. And, when you think they put everything together with the baggage electric tractors, with the conveyor belts electric, and then the pushback, it was absolutely superb. So to see that being so well received, I think was excellent. Now I'm seeing a frozen face there. The screen went frozen there. I thought I actually transfixed you there into a moment of wisdom or great thought. But no, I think it's great the way that's been received.
Well, Chris, I have to tell you, so that was with VivaAerobus, of course. Based down in Monterrey in Mexico, and I was the founding...
Steve, sorry, I've got to say, beautiful accent there, mate, beautiful.
Sorry,
for those who don't know, the man speaks Spanish. It's one of his many languages, and he can speak more than me.
I used to struggle coming from Fife. I used to struggle with English, Chris, once upon a time.
Yeah, some would say I still do.
Thank goodness I've graduated from that school. I was the little factoid. I was the very first director of ground operation for VivaAerobus when we launched the airline on the 30th of November 2006. And so actually it'll be the 14th anniversary of VivaAerobus startup in Mexico in 2 days' time. So I remember it was when we first launched the carrier. We were let down by a supplier, and we had to launch a self-handling operation with about 4 weeks' notice, and it was to launch in 5 stations.
Yeah.
And you can imagine the kind of the challenges that I had as a very green young director of ground ops for an airline that's still, one day before the first commercial flight didn't have its AOC. So I can tell you the equipment that we were using back in those days was not very green. And these diesel polluting old sort of, remember the old Bliss Fox big I think it was a T150 or T180 massive tugs. We were pushing back the 737-300 on its first flight with this massive pushback, streams of diesel out there. So I'm very pleased to see that 14 years on, Viva have graduated along with support from Dnata. So there's a little story for you and our listeners this morning. But
isn't that lovely, Steve? How a good host can bring such wonderful memories and history back to the person that they're interviewing. And fair play to you by saying, and what a full circle that they've now completed a full green flight. And back in the day, the only thing that was green, in your words, was the director. Hey, I see what he did. I didn't even realize I did that there, Chris. Hey, that was beautiful, mate. Always good, eh?
It wasn't even written down in my notes, so no. I didn't know that you were going to bring that one up.
Hey, humility at its best, son. Beautiful. Fair play to you. Right, now back on to some more, like, you know, well done's and also thank yous and good news. So the TIACA board bids farewell to Vladimir Zubkov. So, you know, I've known Vladimir for a long time. Fair play to you, sir. You've done a great job, great commitment to the industry, fantastic. And now Glyn Hughes is taking over. So I'm sure Glyn is going to be, you know, really pleased with that. So that's quite a good marriage, I think, between the two. So good luck and success to them. Got another good bit of news. Very good guy, good friend, Sebastian Scholter, appointed as CEO of Carla's group. So I think Vikram Singh's made a very good decision there, good choice. So fair play to you, brilliant. And something that will spark your juices, the IATA position. And now Mr. Walsh is going to be the 8th Director General.
I knew that Willie could not sort of leave the industry, Chris, when he retired from IAG. I suspected that we'd see him again. You know, Willie, I think, is a bit like Marmite to a lot of people. I think to some of those in the industry, in business, and to his peer airlines and peer CEOs, Willie stands out, you know, from the crowd in terms of his achievements, his tenacity, his capability, his competence, his overall kind of ability to deliver, and so I think, you know, to lose him from the industry would have been very sad. Yeah. I think to some customers, you know, of Willie's over the years, I think they've felt like he's been penny pinching and sort of, you know, taking BA downhill, or Iberia, and introduced Welling and Level and, you know, into the mix, but I think that largely that pales insignificant in terms of Willie's achievements. However, I guess the announcement of Willie arriving as the Director General at IATA, which is a sort of a laggard-esque organisation that has needed the tree shaken for probably since its inception, I suspect. I've always felt that IATA has been designed by its member carriers to be as ineffective as possible. The member carriers, the big boys especially, have not wanted all of the IATA membership to get access to the same, you know, through their capital funds, get access to the same privileges and benefits of being a member of such an organization as they themselves have. So I do think that the IATA are being rather brave here. And I wish Willie Walsh all the very best in his role in shaking the tree, because one can be sure that no stone will be left unturned. And I think this is great news, not only for the IATA membership, but actually for the industry in general, and for the consumers, also for the travel trade, the trade associate, the trade. I mean, when I say the trade, I mean the travel agent. The trade, you know, they will have gone through pretty well, let's say as is, they've gone through shit in the last kind of 9 months as well as everybody else, but their businesses, you know, their size of the pie was closing over time as IATA were, you know, championing NDC and so on to replace a lot of the legacy trade solutions. So I'm really happy that Willie's gone there. I'm really chuffed. I think it's brilliant news. I've also seen that the new Saudi Director General has been invited onto the IATA Board of Governors, which is fantastic news. It maintains Saudi's voice at the top of the table, a firm that you and I have worked for, Chris, that we respect immensely. And I've also seen that they've announced 2 new chairmanships. So that is also very good. The first fellow is Robin Hayes, who is the CEO of JetBlue, as chairman of IATA on a rotating basis, who will be replaced by Rikard Gustafsson from SAS. I think it's Rikard Gustafsson. That name, all of this comes out of my memory. So if I got that wrong, apologies to Rikard. But great news. Very happy to see all the wheels turning and the change at IATA.
I was about to say we should also recognise the 4 years that Alexandre de Juniac has done. It's a tough position. It's like you said, it's a Marmite position, and so being the fair and the care side of the relationship. Okay, you know what I'm saying?
You're right. Maybe that's rather unfortunate. I mean, I didn't see it. To clarify, I did not see Alexandre as a sort of a firebrand. You know, much fire in his belly. You know, sort of to the levels that I think Willie will do that. That's probably a fairer way to put it.
Yeah, but I think it's funny what you're saying.
It might have been like walking through treacle, Chris. Of course.
Yeah, exactly. But it's funny what you're saying, because depending on the timing and the situation and the external influencing factors, certain styles do better than others. So a lot of it is about timing, and the industry is starting to see that now. You know, there's lots of changes for certain reasons, not necessarily because somebody was doing something wrong, but it's just a different set of factors that they've now got to contend with, or the business. And when you go through tough times, sometimes just the momentum of that change has a big impact, just like in football management.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Now
I'm glad we reestablish the good cop bad cop relationship.
It flips at times, doesn't it? But another good bit of news, and also good timing. Omar Hariri, you know, he was featuring there with the opening of the Riyadh pharmaceutical unit, which was lovely to see. And I know if he was here and we asked him how is everything, he always would say everything is well, all's well. So good on you, Omar. Lovely to see your picture again. And and especially with the masks, very, very well done. And now looking at the masks, we had a little bit of chaos in Shanghai where there was a little spike of COVID, and it looked like it came from a couple of guys on the cargo side who were opening and cleaning a container that had been sealed and was damp, and they weren't wearing their masks. So again, for everybody and anybody, masks make a difference. Wear the damn things whenever you can. Now, Amazon, 1.2 million around the world, 50% up on last year. So it's very clear, you know, where some of the positives are coming in the industry, Steve, and it's going to continue hugely, I think.
Yeah, and also I was I saw on BBC News last night, Chris, that that they are paying every single one of their employees a
$300,
extra bonus, which I think you know, they already increased the wages, certainly in the UK. I mean, Amazon UK, I think, you know, so for those not in the UK, I think UK minimum wage, I can't remember, something like £9 or something, isn't it? Something along those lines. And but Amazon have you know, decided at the start of the crisis to pay every extra £1 an hour, taking the sort of starting pay rate up to £12 an hour, which I think you know, was very admirable of them. But they saw actually what they were needing to get out of their employees, and that's something, coming back to our point about, you know, being fair and caring about your employee group. They knew that their employees were going to take a bit of a slamming, for want of a better term, because of the rise in e-commerce and you know, and digital sales platforms. So but Amazon did the right thing and continue to do the right thing, I think, in spite of a lot of criticism, Chris. There's a lot of unfair criticism sort of you know, directed towards Amazon. And there was a documentary on Channel 4 this week or last week about the secrets of Amazon. You know, one of these sort of investigative journalists sort of going behind the scenes and trying to sort of catch Amazon out, which I think is always rather sort of you know, sort of storyboarded. It's easy picking, you know, and they sort of forget all the good that Amazon does for a lot of people, in spite of the challenges of the high street, of course, which is a very, very topical issue now as we move into. Can you believe, Chris, it's about to move into December? You know, what would ordinarily have been the busiest time on our high streets all across the world, I suspect will be a very different run up to Christmas this year. No,
it's a big shock. Just on that e-commerce point though, Steve, I'll tell you something else that's happening now. You're seeing so many drop-offs now in personal vehicles, and I think that's something that's going to, you know, come to the fore a little bit with regards to insurances and if there's any damage and, you know, payouts and all that sort of stuff. I think that's a little bit. I'm not sure, you know, what your feeling is on that, but I think that's a little bit something that should raise concern.
Well, I mean, it's a bit like sort of the license, the hire cars, you know, sort of the what do you call the minicab, you know, sort of a, you know, is it a, you know, black cab versus a minicab on the road, or a private hire. So that's the word I'm looking for. You know, black cab licensed cab versus a private hire. And then, of course, the advent of Uber sort of, came along and questioned some of that there. I think these are alternative ways, Chris, to see things. To give people that have got a full-time job maybe and want to do a little bit of extra income on the side. I see nothing wrrong with them using their private car, providing they are properly insured and the goods are properly insured. And therefore, to be able to get the gig, it's incumbent on the contracting party, i.e. Amazon, if that is the case. I haven't had the story, to ensure these licensing documentations in place.
Not mentioning Amazon, just in general. But that's the thing.
Sorry, I wasn't aware of the story. But yeah, look, I would say I'm all for the gig economy. I think the gig economy is very helpful, and it helps, particularly at a time like this, Chris, where people are looking for every way and means to earn a couple of quid to keep their family fed and watered, and particularly as we come up to Christmas, that a little bit extra on the table. Maybe they've maintained their job throughout the pandemic, but they want a little bit of extra on the table. I think there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah, no, 100%. My only point is that, for everybody else who's on the road as well, if the vehicles are not insured for use and then something happens, there's a bigger issue. And also it's difficult for people to have that extra insurance when they're desperate for that extra money. So what you said is the responsibility from the company that employs and recruits them.
Validation, verification.
Exactly. What two lovely words, mate.
Look, so you were talking about me getting excited earlier, or sort of, my juices flowing. But I knew that words like validation and verification, Chris, would certainly appeal to you. Appeal to you.
Hey, fair and care, validate and verify. That's it, my friend. Yeah, brilliant. Right now, anything else that you want to?
I just wanted to mention a bit of controversy this week with the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine.
Yes.
Which I find thoroughly disheartening. Now let's not jump to conclusions, because we don't really know the full story, and we certainly, as we tell our listeners every week, we are no experts in this. But from what I understand from the press and what I understand in listening to one of the few editors on BBC News that I really enjoy listening to, is a guy called Fergus Walsh, who is the health editor, and I like him a lot.
Yeah.
And compared to the political editor, whom I can't stand, Laura Kuenssberg, for those that weren't aware of who that might have been. But I think Fergus was saying the other day, yesterday, that look, all is not lost. I think there is different ways to carve up some of these trials, and what they've done is merge some of these results together. And so whilst there was some kind of headline news cautioning the vaccine trials, and there was an article in Wired, a publication that I do not read and would not subscribe to, but that was sort of giving the usual fear mongering. And anyway, it was Fergus Walsh and his colleague Hugh Pym who were saying, look, all is not lost here. There are different ways to carve up these trials. Many things happen in different ways. These trials are subject to change and evolution, and indeed everything that they do is in coordination with the regulator. So I was potentially disheartened by them running unstuck, Chris, because this was the vaccine that did not require the serious cold chain requirements of -70 degrees storage and transportation. And so that disheartened me a little bit, not because I sort of want to be first in line or think I should be first in line for the vaccine, but because I think it makes certainly delivering to the developing world far easier for that. So let's hope that resolved. And on a closing note, as things start to look up and start to look more positive, we are seeing seeing Boeing, the MAX recertification program running at pace. EASA now announcing that they expect that the aircraft will be recertified by the European regulator in January. That's good news. At the same time, the Chinese regulator for the classic fleet have found some cracks in the landing gear struts and assemblies. So they've grounded some aircraft there in China. So different aircraft, but Boeing's woes sort of get some positive news and then get some negative to balance that out. And that's it, I think, for me this week. Nothing much else to add, other than to say I've thoroughly enjoyed the show today. I enjoy it. Not that I don't enjoy it most weeks, but just to coin a phrase from you, Chris.
That's how I started.
Most of the conversation that we've had today has been really, really thoroughly enjoyable.
Yeah. No, very good. A bit like the two Ronnies. Yeah, it'll be goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from him. But on that point you made there about Oxford. Now, one of the things that we had on the Pharma digital event was, that whether it's 12 or 13 vaccines that are going to start to come on board, your point about, making the right choice for the right vaccine for the right region and location, as well as also the cost implications of storage and transportation, is so important. But somebody tongue in cheek, I love an acronym, and they said to me about, data, and I said, does anyone talk accurately? And if the data isn't accurate, and if people don't extract accurate findings from the data, it gives an open door to these people who are saying, this isn't right, and I don't trust it, and it's too quick. That's what I find really frustrating. These scientists have done an incredible job. And, as soon as it comes out, if somebody said to me, it's ready now, and there's somebody at your front gate, I'd let them stick it in me straight away. Well,
it's interesting. We didn't mention this, but when we were talking about Qantas, we probably should have done. The other bit of news, of course, was we saw this week that Alan Joyce had stated that it was Qantas' intention for international flying, for passengers to have been vaccinated.
Yep.
Now, this reminds me of, you remember when working in Africa, Chris, we had a little yellow book, the book of prophylaxis. I seem to recollect yellow fever prophylaxis. And that was to ensure that you had the barrier vaccination against yellow fever.
Yeah.
I can certainly see some sort of further discussion about that. I don't think that Qantas's largest operation is domestic Australia. The European Union, even the Schengen and non-Schengen states in the European Union, let's say, and UK, because sort of now adjacent to the European Union. But for the UK and Europe, it operates largely as a domestic market.
Yeah. So
when you look at that and say, well, okay, so Qantas are suggesting that to travel internationally, you need vaccination, but to travel domestically, you don't. Qantas's biggest market is domestic Australia. Well, our domestic market in Europe is domestic Europe, which is, all across the board, and we don't function like an international market. So I think there's going to be a lot of discussion to be had on this. I'm not sure whether it's the right thing to say that vaccinations must be given for people to travel. My view would be that would be a wrong thing to do. I think, but then again, how do you ensure that sort of you've got a meaningful amount of the population vaccinated? So it's a very difficult call. I suspect that something that will end up on Mr. Walsh's table very early in his tenure. Yes. And I know that Willie will make the right call.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. But it's also a good motivator, Steve, to get the right numbers of vaccinations in the population. And also, it gives that extra bit of confidence. If somebody says, well, everybody who's flying on this aircraft, or everybody who's attending this theatre, or everybody who's on this particular cruise liner, they're only on if they've all been vaccinated. It gives that extra bit of confidence.
It does, but how long will it take to get that meaningful value? That's the problem, I think, Chris.
It is. But anything that, in my opinion, excuse me, anything that can accelerate it and bring businesses and life and futures back to the current generation and the next generation, I think it's the right thing to do. Just my opinion.
There will be others. Yes, there will be others.
There will indeed, and probably many different viewpoints. But that's what makes the world so good. Lastly, Stephen, but by no means least, one of the things that we kicked off, and by people asking, and we've had some, and I've been in touch with some of the people, is to do with the Skylight Care, and thankfully some organisations, they're offering now that any contracts that they get, if there's any of the displaced staff that work for those contracts, they're going to provide the services for free. So some of it is with training, some of it is with services, just to keep our colleagues associated. And I know when we started, one of the things we said was that if we can help one person today, then we're better than we were yesterday. And I think
absolutely
that's definitely a really good thing. And that also comes back into the fair and care philosophy of this particular this particular podcast session. And I know Salem goes with that as well, who, by the way, is getting married next week. So, you know, big shout out.
I wonder which day we'll be recording then, Chris.
Sorry, yeah. No, knowing Salem, he'll nip out for 35 minutes just to make sure he meets his commitments. But good luck, Salem. Right. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
As always, mate. It's an absolute pleasure, and always look forward to it. Really appreciate it. Take care.
Speak to you next week.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.